Hello, I'd like to talk a little bit more about atheism. I just put a video up about atheism earlier today and got a great comment by a PCB. And he said, atheism is a belief in this, he's asking me, if atheism is a belief in the self, and that atheism believes that man is supreme. And so anyway, I will read his whole statement. Atheism is a belief in the self, question, 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 that man is supreme, question, 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 not even close. There's not much room for egotism when we atheist materialists realize we are nothing special in a cosmic sense, but a part of the whole. The universe is not anthrocentric. I'm assuming he means anthropocentric, and that we have no cosmic purpose, no cosmic battle of good versus evil, no metaphysics, no eternal rewards, or assume we don't survive death. I can't think of any other point of view that is so fatal to all sorts of ego. And then he said, and state worship, question. North Korea is officially atheist, but they worship Kim as divinity with superpowers. That's a state religion, not atheism. And I think PCB makes a lot of great points here, and I'd like to discuss some of this to clarify and move us forward in the conversation. First, my definition of worship is not at all the definition of worship that most people hold. My definition of worship is derived from deep internal research through states of meditation and observing what the mind actually does and observing what happens when the mind, quote unquote, shuts down. What I could say is that worship is an activity of the mind. And what we can say is that what we worship is what our mind is most on. What our mind is most avoiding, maybe. It's the fuel that is sourcing the intensive activity of the mind, that keeps the mind running like a hamster on the wheel. That is our greatest worship, and that is our greatest value. Even if we don't know it, even if we don't want to admit it, it is that which is causing us to behave and causing our actions in the world. And the way we behave and the way we act in the world, the way that what we actually do is much more reflective of what we truly believe than what we say or what we think we believe. When you put people under pressure, then you start to find out what they truly believe, because their actions start to reflect more honestly the underlying pattern, the underlying disharmony. All belief has a degree of disharmony to it. And so, to me, our highest value is equal to our God. It's a psychological God. And so, when a human being, if we watch our minds, what we will find is that our minds are constantly on the self, constantly on self-centered small things. If we just add up the amount of time during the day, we will realize that our deepest value is in fact the self, and that we are in fact worshiping the man, the human being. Really, we're worshiping the mind itself and the sense of self itself. And so in a lot of ways, if we watch just the ordinary human being, we will discover and watch ourselves. I discovered this by watching myself. I discovered this by watching my students. I discovered this by watching people. That it matters very little if we are watching a Christian or an atheist or a person who's agnostic or maybe it was all about control. It may still be. They have largely lost control. Society doesn't give them as much control over society. Politicians more and more are able to not be Christian or not be religious in order to get into a seat of power. their power in society is slipping away rather dramatically. And so they've lost the capacity to control society. But religion has largely been about control. It gives us a sense of control in our own lives. We know if we were in religion and if we had a problem, the church would have our backs. That is a sense of control. A sense of control over uncertainty. Now we have the state and we have the welfare system. So many people who are atheists, not all, there were a few true atheists who have thought it through very deeply and have to come to the conclusion that there is no God. Of course, this all depends on the definition of God. The definition of God, as described by an atheist, typically is, if you could imagine it, it's a picture of Moses, like a guy, old guy with a long white beard sitting on a cloud. Something like that. It's a pretty reasonable belief to say that there isn't such a guy. But that would not be even remotely similar to the type of what I might refer to if I were you to use the word God, which would be much more similar to Jesus' description of God as being the Alpha and the Omega, which quite literally means all that is. Alpha is the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet. The Omega is the last letter in the alphabet. The alphabet is both numbers and letters. And so quite literally it means the A to Z, the number 1 to 10 or whatever. It's the totality. It quite literally means it's the universe and all that entails. Very different definitions of God. Now, an atheist might actually be able to agree with that. There is a universe, and we are part of all that is. They may be able to agree with this depending on the degree of research that they've done into their own mind and consciousness. But I have yet to meet a single atheist that has spoken in that way. I typically use the term isness, another statement that just says all that is, what is. God is a word that theists tend to use and atheists tend to use. But maybe those founders, such as Jesus, when he used the word God, he was not talking about a man that looked like Moses with a long beard sitting on a cloud. Instead, we may have to take him at face value. What he meant was all that is. And so within the religious structures, there are actually multiple gods, depending on the writings in which one's reading, and depending on the interpretations of the writings. And it could be that someone who's a theist has the view of all that is, and someone else who's a theist has the view of Moses sitting on a cloud. An atheist thinks they're both the same view. And most atheists, I've not seen a single one yet. I've yet to see a single one who has recognized that within theology, it's possible that you could have a person who has that concept of God being all that is, which would include oneself and everybody else, and the rock and the walls, and you get the idea, hopefully. So in a way, it's a very immature narrative about theology. And I can't blame the atheists for that narrative, because in many cases, that's also the narrative of the theists. What I would say is when we pull away the curtain of atheism and theism, and we look at the actual content of the mind of the individuals, there's not really a lot of difference. The primary difference, if we were to look at those populations, I would say the degree of fear. Theists tend to be more fearful. They may fear the judgment of God, which is unfortunate. Let's see, so going further into we can see that PCB, the person who made the comment, has some very stereotypical views of theism, such as that humans are special in the cosmos, because the universe is not anthropocentric, that we have no cosmic purpose, so that humanity there's no purpose for humanity, that there is no cosmic battle of good and evil, there is no metaphysics, no eternal rewards, and that there is no that we don't survive past death. So there's a number of what we can describe as negative beliefs. These are beliefs against something, assuming that these theological propositions are false. Yet PCB also has no proof that there is no survival past death, or there are no metaphysics, there is no cosmic battle of good and evil, that there is no cosmic purpose. He has no proof that that is false. So it's a belief or projection on his part, a theological belief or projection on his part. I'm not saying I disagree with that. What I would say is I don't know. I can say that human beings have these experiences, and that's all that we know is our experiences. We can't say that our experiences are true. What we can say is that our deepest values are completely and inextricably tied up in our experiences. And that is where our hidden God often lies, our truest values. So he talks about North Korea is officially atheist, but they worship Kim as a divinity with superpowers. That's state religion, not atheism. Again, I have no argument with that. That is state religion, not atheism. But oftentimes the label, as he points out, that North Korea is officially an atheist state, and that they don't worship, or that they worship Kim as if he were a superpower, as if he were a god. So oftentimes the label and the reality don't match up. The same with atheism, same with theism, same with agnosticism. Oftentimes the label and the reality don't match up. We are in fact worshiping something with our attention. Do we know what we're truly worshiping versus what we think we're worshiping? Very few individuals actually live by their beliefs. Very few. If you watch atheists, very few of them actually live by their beliefs. Their minds are not that different from the minds of theists, in that their attention is completely on the self, or mostly on the self. There are, of course, exceptions. I would describe the exceptions to be awakened, spiritually awakened individuals, or consciously awakened individuals. A consciously awakened individual experiences life, experiences the sense of connectedness of all that is. So it's as one sense of being shines through all that is. There's no need to call that anything. I describe it as isness. It just is as it is. So hopefully this helps to shine a light on the fundamental underlying aspects of the human psychology, of what's occurring in the mind, and then the story that's on top of that. The story that's on top of it is atheism, theism, agnosticism, and many other possible stories that we have. But the underlying, the fundament of the mind is itself, its content, its beliefs, its fears, and it's completely wrapped up in itself like a hamster running around on a little wheel. Consciousness is deeper still. When the mind quiets, consciousness, awareness, not knowledge, not projections, but awareness starts to emerge. And that's fundamental. I suspect that awareness is maybe what Jesus might have referred to as the Holy Spirit. If we were to give it a religious term, I don't even know if Jesus considered that to be a religious term. He might have just been giving the best description he could given the language he had available at the time. So hopefully this helps. Thank you. Bye-bye. If you have any other questions, anything that you find offensive in my video here or these ideas, I'd be happy to hear you and send a comment, or you can send me an email. Take care. Warm regards. Bye-bye.